This is your Classical Break, your daily dose of classical music. I'm Tyler Alderson, and today we'll be listening to CPE Bach's 12 Variations on the Follies of Spain for piano. The Follies of Spain, also known as La Folia, is one of the oldest and most frequently used bits of thematic material in classical music. It's not so much a melody as a chord progression, and it gives composers a great base for sets of variations. And that's just what a lot of them have done, from Corelli to Liszt to Vivaldi to CPE's father, Johann Sebastian Bach. The Follies' origin is somewhat obscure, but it seems to have come from the folk music of Spain and Portugal and spread to Italy, where it became quite popular among composers. It was in some ways a rite of passage in the 17th and 18th centuries. Tons of composers tried their hands at a set of variations, and the results are wonderfully, varied. To say that CPE Bach wrote a lot of keyboard music is understating it a little. He wrote over 300 keyboard sonatas and many other sets of variations. He even literally wrote the book on keyboard playing, a treatise titled An Essay on the True Art of Playing Keyboard Instruments that was hugely influential and gobbled up by guys like Beethoven and Haydn. One of his big innovations was the use of the thumbs. Yeah, it might seem obvious today, but back then convention said you shouldn't use your thumbs, which he bucked in favor of a 10-finger approach that won out in the end. And there's another really important point that he makes in there. Quote, "Since a musician cannot move others unless he himself is moved, he must of necessity feel all of the affects that he hopes to arouse in his listeners." In his mind, there wasn't a split between technique and expressiveness. They were both essential to a good performance, and that's one of the things his musical descendants took to heart. Some have even gone so far as to call him a proto-romantic, focusing on his advocacy of self-expression through music. Like many other keyboard players and composers of his day, one of CPE Bach's specialties was long improvisations, often played as part of the after-dinner entertainment. These could go on for quite a while, and the thematic material would be stretched to its breaking point in the process. This is where something like the Follies becomes useful. It's recognizable, but also a pretty blank slate that can be filled with all kinds of musical ideas. Like many other keyboard players and composers of his day, one of CPE Bach's specialties was long improvisations, often played as part of the after-dinner entertainment. These could go on for quite a while, and the thematic material would be stretched to its breaking point in the process. This is where something like the Follies becomes useful. It's recognizable, but also a pretty blank slate that can be filled with all kinds of musical ideas. These written-down variations are a natural outgrowth of those long improvisations. Presumably, a lot of this was composed by sitting down and playing, noting down the variations he thought were particularly good or interesting. And listening to the set, what's striking are the contrasts. It's the same theme, but it can sound tender, graceful, heavy, urgent, all kinds of moods from that single initial spark. There's a reason people say CPE Bach was a proto-romantic, and a reason why romantics like Beethoven and Brahms held him in high regard even after his popularity had waned. Here's Stefano Legarati with CPE Bach's 12 Variations on the Follies of Spain. It'd be fascinating to actually hear some of CPE Bach's improvisations. If those are anything to go by, they must have been spectacular. Thanks to Stefano Ligarati for putting that up on museopen.org, and thank you for listening. If you have the chance, please rate and review this podcast wherever it is that you're getting it. I'm Tyler Alderson, and tomorrow for your classical break, we'll be celebrating Debussy's birthday with his Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. I'll see you then.